Today is a day for calm and tranquility because our reflection is about Kamado Tanjiro. There are spoilers for the entire Demon Slayer anime. Let's get started. Many protagonists are known for their more assertive way of behaving. It's almost like the trademark of all anime protagonists. They tend to be more extroverted, more imposing. However, the main character of Demon Slayer breaks away from this pattern. He shows the advantages of being the opposite. The advantages we can have by showing calmness and temperance. It's not common to see patient protagonists. So this video is going to be special because Tanjiro will bring a unique way to learn about the state of calm and how much that can help us. First of all, Tanjiro has a personality that many people wish they could emulate. He doesn't have a big goal that involves only himself, but rather one that involves many other people. And to me, that's one of the things that makes his story quite unique. I believe that a lot of people identify with this character, at least in some way. And even if you don't share any traits with him, you admire and wish you had some of his characteristics. Whether it's his sense of responsibility, or the way he cares for people in vulnerable situations, or for being so calm, many of us, just like what happens with Tanjiro, don't choose to take on great responsibilities, but rather, life circumstances end up bringing these big challenges. But the truth is, all of us will have great responsibilities in life, whether we want them or not. That's Tanjiro's purpose. It's not to become the strongest of all or the best of all. That's for Inosuke. His purpose is to provide for and protect the people he loves, to the point that it becomes his greatest strength and his main motivation to get up every day. Today's video is about purpose, altruism, anger, and patience. Tanjiro grew up with a great responsibility, one that naturally falls on many older siblings, having to take care of the younger ones. He has 5 siblings, and he felt he needed to protect all of them. He grew up with his family in perfect harmony. They didn't live a luxurious life, but they lived very well. He looked up to his father, Tanjiro, a lot. He was kind of a role model for him, and much of his personality was shaped by his father, a figure who exuded a lot of courage and strength. Tanjiro's father later passes away, and as a result, his siblings started to see Tanjiro as a sort of father figure. In general, taking on responsibilities is something positive. It's a good thing. It helps us grow. This can also happen when you're a child. Children who take on responsibilities tend to become more altruistic as adults. Anthropologists Beatrice and John Whiting reported in their investigation into the origins of altruism, helping others without expecting any kind of reward. They found a clear pattern. The more responsibilities children had that contributed to the upkeep of the family, such as taking care of younger children, looking after animals, helping to grow and harvest food, helping with meals, and so on, the more likely they were to act altruistically. And not just with family members, but also with outsiders, with people from the community. And that's exactly what happens with this character. His sense of altruism is enormous, one of the greatest ever seen in the world of anime. And after his father's death, his sense of commitment grows even stronger. Tanjiro even shows this in the very first episode of the anime. He mentions the impermanence of the world, how change is constant, how our lives are all about change. He mentions that things are always constantly changing, that no happiness lasts forever. So, from a young age, Tanjiro understood the impermanence of the world. However, even though he knew all of this, when the greatest tragedy of his life actually happened, he truly succumbed to the pain he felt, but still managed to pick himself up. On a certain day, Tanjiro goes to a nearby town to sell charcoal. His siblings also end up wanting to go with him. However, Tanjiro doesn't take any of them because, as his mother mentioned, it would be hard for him to carry all of them when they got tired on the way back. So he heads toward the city in search of charcoal without his siblings. And his life changes completely when he returns home. At that moment, he finds a completely destroyed environment. He realizes that his entire family was killed except for his sister Nezuko. However, Nezuko, on top of that, had become an Oni, a kind of demon. Then, he sees her acting aggressively and attacking him. And even though she attacks him, at no point does he consider not saving her. The only thing he wants to know now is how to solve this new problem. He starts to have faith that he will be able to bring his sister back. That's why he begs Tomioka not to kill her, because he didn't want to lose anyone else from his family. And even though he understands the impermanence and constant change of life, Tanjiro starts to blame himself. He starts blaming himself because at the moment when everything happened, he wasn't there. He blames himself for the suffering his family went through at that moment when he was away. And it's interesting that all of this happens very quickly, and Tanjiro also doesn't have that process, that time to heal from all of it. He has to quickly start a new life without his family, having to deal with and protect his sister. Now, since he only has Nezuko, she becomes his main focus. Now his focus is to make her become human again. This is one of the things that leads him to become a demon slayer. He doesn't mind the fact that he might have to carry her forever or always have to deal with her, because just imagine the pain he would feel if she hurt a human. Besides protecting her, he would also have to protect innocent people from her. In other words, yet another huge responsibility for him at this moment. The good thing is that he enjoys doing this. He likes protecting people in vulnerable situations. He has this incredible sense of protection. It's way above average. In the train arc, there's a scene where he's about to die, but he's only worried about whether someone else will turn into a demon if he ends up dying. He's lying on the ground and Inosuke asks if he's okay. And the only thing Tanjiro asks is whether the conductor was safe. Tanjiro doesn't like to see anyone suffering. This makes it really hard for him to hurt anyone. It's very difficult for him to hurt someone. Sometimes this even ends up getting in his way. And that's one of the reasons why at the beginning of the anime, he ends up being too indecisive. It's as if somehow his empathy at the beginning would paralyze him at certain moments. Tanjiro has high empathy. However, the most curious part of all this is that more altruistic people aren't necessarily better at helping others. And in fact, it can be the opposite. Some studies indicate that people who exhibit heroic behaviors in extreme situations, like firefighters and other professionals, score high on personality traits that are generally associated with psychopaths. A propensity for risk-taking, sensation-seeking, coolness under stress, and a tendency to take control in social situations. These are traits more commonly seen in people with low empathy. Someone who's more inclined to save others doesn't necessarily have a cold mind. But when you're calmer and less reactive, or when a situation affects you less, that can indicate you'll stay calmer in complex situations and will end up having a better chance of helping others. In other words, an excess of empathy in some cases can indeed be a problem when trying to help someone. You just have to remember, for those with a lot of empathy, just remember that day when someone got sick and needed help, and you were so affected by the situation that you couldn't take any action. You were paralyzed. There's a danger that the empathic pain can be so intense that you can only conceive of solutions that work for you instead of those that might help the person who is suffering. The psychologist Paul Bloom also emphasizes how high levels of empathy lead us to perform psychologically easy actions that generate a minimal cognitive load. And that's precisely what happens with Tanjiro in the beginning, because he becomes a demon slayer. So he's going to have to, because he's kind of patient, because he trusts that he will achieve a result. So his actions and his hope for a good future justify the patience he has. This calmness, in fact, seems to have been greatly passed down from his father, who was an extremely calm and patient man. Patience is a virtue because it cultivates our inner strength and good sense. In a world that is often rushed and demanding, the ability to wait calmly and tolerate some discomfort makes these people great at making decisions, as this study shows. Patience helps us avoid acting out of frustration or anger, thus preventing us from making hasty choices that could have negative consequences. With patience, we are able to face challenges with balance. It helps us focus on long-term goals instead of short-term setbacks. In other words, as Tanjiro shows, patience promotes resilience. When things don't go as we planned, patience gives us the strength and determination to remain optimistic. Cultivating patience allows us to appreciate the process of growth and helps us deal with adversity in a calmer way. This promotes greater peace and contentment. Patience is reflected in the way Tanjiro is able to see things in life more positively and lightly, even in extreme situations. It's as if, in the end, he believes that everything will work out. 3 pioneering studies by researcher Sarah Schnitzker define patience as the tendency to wait calmly in the face of frustration or adversity. The article concludes that in these different contexts, patience is essential to achieving a state of well-being. Tanjiro is able to maintain this calm in many situations, regardless of the enemy. But Tanjiro is human, and even though he knows all this, nothing stops him from feeling stronger emotions like anger. But Tanjiro shows the important role of this feeling, because anger is an emotion that drives us to bring about some kind of change, a change that can save or protect someone's life. When he sees Muzan, he directs an enormous amount of anger at him. He says that he is going to destroy Muzan, stating that he himself will be the one responsible for killing him. Tanjiro says that as long as he lives, Muzan will never have his forgiveness. In this scene, he shows that despite all the kindness and empathy he has, he also knows that he needs to channel those feelings in order to protect the people around him, and that he has his own priorities. He is able to put himself in the demon's shoes, largely because of his sister, since he has a similar situation that makes him empathetic. But on the other hand, he increasingly avoids relativizing when it comes to not killing demons. The point is that, although Tanjiro deeply sympathizes with the tragic stories of the demons and understands the feelings of each one he faces, he never turned any of these villains into heroes or anything like that. He understands each one, but he will fulfill his goal of defeating them all without hesitation. He understands the demons, but he doesn't justify them. He knows that they are beings who lack much empathy, who don't regret or reflect on their acts of cruelty. So he understands that in many moments, he will have to not back down or feel remorse for them, even if that's hard to do. Tanjiro knows the big difference between understanding and forgiving. It's a very fine line. At the same time that he has to kill a demon, he understands the pain that some of them carry. It's basically living with ambivalence inside yourself. And what's interesting is that generally ambivalent people who harbor more dual feelings like Tanjiro tend to react less to emotions. As this study showed, ambivalent people take longer to make decisions and are less likely to act impulsively. When you're ambivalent, pre-existing attitudes are less likely to determine your actions. And this is one of the greatest virtues of this character, his enormous ability to not simply react to everything he feels. He hardly ever gives in to anger over just anything or any kind of provocation. It's as if he manages to stay rational even in the most extreme situations, understanding the value of each feeling. Even when he needs to be tougher with Zenitsu or Inosuke, he doesn't necessarily show hatred toward them. He tries to understand them. In many moments, he is the one who brings calm to the two of them. He's the one who tries to bring Zenitsu back when he's being too pessimistic, and he never retaliates against Inosuke's attacks. This is actually something that makes Inosuke respect him. Tanjiro is able, at key moments, to open his mind to understand what others need, as seen in the famous scene where he interacts with Gyutaro and his sister, two demons who were suffering, hurting each other, and Tanjiro shows empathy for them in that moment. He says what they needed to hear. Another striking and painful point about how he doesn't use emotions, or tries not to use emotions, to guide his actions is in the Mugen Train arc. Once again, Tanjiro shows how he was still affected by his family and by guilt. In the dream, he has to leave the illusion behind to face the harsh reality. He says, "I wanted to stay here forever." That line is really impactful and showed just how much he was suffering. It's one of the most iconic scenes in the anime for me, because in the dream, it shows a reality where his family was okay, they were alive, and he could once again enjoy a reality he no longer had. But no matter how much he felt all of that, it was no use going back because it wasn't real. Here, it shows the importance of moving forward even with the overwhelming desire to stay, and the importance of not clinging to illusions or to emotions when they won't help you. Throughout the anime, Tanjiro shows that emotions are guides, yes, but not reasons to take action. We call this thought fusion. Thought fusion or emotional fusion happens every time we feel an emotion or think something, and we become so immersed in it that we take action based on those thoughts or that emotion. And not every emotion is valid, and even less so every thought. We don't necessarily have to act according to what we feel or think. Thought fusion is like being inside a lake. It's as if we're almost drowning with only our nose and eyes above the surface. That way, we can't really see the space around us because the water is almost covering us. Tanjiro is more distant from his emotions. He is in fact inside the lake because no one can escape emotions, no one can escape feeling something. But instead of Tanjiro drowning in the lake, he's swimming. In other words, he is in control of his actions without denying his emotions.